Hi everyone, today is day 53 of the Bible of the year and we'll be going through Leviticus 26 and 27. So Leviticus 26 begins with God's promises to the Israelites that if they follow and obey his instructions that he will bless them. And what really stood out to me was the first verse where God says, do not make up any idols or set up carved images or sacred pillars or sculpted stones in your land so that you may worship them. I am the Lord your God. And this reference made me think about the first commandment in Exodus 20, where God said, you shall have no other gods before me. And there's a reason to why this comes first, as being one of the most important things, that we shouldn't put anything above God, because God is a jealous God and nothing should take the place of God in our life. But sometimes, just like the Israelites, our sinful nature might prioritize other things, and this can become worship if we're not careful. We also see in this chapter God promises abundant crop and peace. And I really like this verse 8. 5 of you will chase 100, and 100 of you will chase 10,000. All your enemies will fall beneath the sword. This shows the supernatural ability God has given to his people, where 5 people will chase 100 people. This, in reality, is not possible, but with God, all things are possible. And it shows that with human efforts, this cannot be accomplished, but God will give the supernatural ability for the Israelites to have victory over their enemies. And also God promises them to live amongst and walk amongst them, which is amazing that the living God will be living with his people. God also promises to fulfill his covenant, which is an agreement he made with the Israelites. But we also see in this chapter that if the Israelites disobey God by breaking the covenant, breaking this agreement, there will be consequences for their sins. He will bring disasters like sicknesses and defeat from their enemies. Their enemies will rule over the Israelites, and he will scatter them among the nations, which makes me think about the Israelites going back into that slavery that they were freed from. They will live in fear. They will have no peace, that even the sound of a leaf would cause them fear. So it shows constant torment, and that they will be given over to their enemies. God warns that if the Israelites continue to disobey, that the punishment will intensify. They'll have no crops, no food, which means that some of them will die during this period. And what also stood out to me in this chapter was the repetition of God will punish them 7 times more than their sins. And the number 7 signifies completion, also indicate a 7-fold punishment, indicating the consequences for their disobedience. And this is all designed to bring the Israelites back to God. Sometimes we suffer because of our own disobedience. We turn away from God. We walk into a different road, which is far from God. And sometimes when we go through this suffering, we seek God the most. We know that we cannot get out of it, that God is the only one that can deliver us. And we also see in this chapter God being merciful. When the Israelites confess their sins, he'll remember the covenant that he made with Abraham. So I feel with this, God is saying that when you disobey God, you will be humbled. You will go through this process of refinement, and he will break down your pride. He will humble you so that you will see God again, that you will put God first. And sometimes when we do walk into a blessing, we sometimes forget about God. So it's really important to remain humble. And I feel for this chapter, I really see God as a father to us, where he gives you good gifts when you obey him, when you follow him, you follow his instructions. And these instructions are there to protect you. But then when you disobey, when you walk away from God, there are consequences for our actions. He disciplines you, so then you turn away from your sin and you turn back towards him. So through this you learn a lesson, just like a child learns a lesson when they do something wrong. The parent might withhold something from them, but then they give it back. Like they might take away their toys, and the child might cry, but then the parent gives back the toy to the child, and maybe even gives them more toys. So I feel like this is what God is teaching us through this chapter, and that God is also really forgiving, that his anger doesn't last a lifetime. His anger is short. He's merciful as long as we turn back to him. Leviticus 27, we see that the chapter begins by Moses instructing the Israelites that a person can be dedicated unto the service of God by making a vow. And a vow is a promise made to God and needs to be fulfilled. Depending on the sex and the age of the person, a different value was assigned. And we can see the value was made mostly in terms of the estimation of the physical labor of the person. So that, for example, a normal 25-year-old man could do more labor than labor on the behalf of the tabernacle than a 5-year-old boy. And we can see through this chapter that God gives an opportunity to everyone, for everyone to take part, even people that cannot afford it, where the person has to be taken to the priest, and the priest will determine the amount for you to pay based on what you can afford. So we see here a God that is just, so that even the poor people can take part, which makes me think about in Mark 12, the widow's offering, where many rich people put a large amount, but then a poor widow came and dropped only 2 coins. So this widow actually gave everything she had. And we can see that God really does look at people's hearts and their contributions to the service of the Lord, so that you're giving what you can and he sees your heart. So when we have these opportunities to serve, we should take them. And this doesn't have to be just financially, but it also can be with how much time we dedicate onto God, whether we're using our gifts to serve one another in the church, or are we using these gifts to glorify ourselves? Our gifts are for other people, to help others. And when we're given these opportunities, are we taking them? So I feel like everyone can dedicate time to serve God in the church. And we also see in verse 28, however, anything specifically set apart for the Lord, whether a person, an animal, or family property, must never be sold or bought back, because it belongs to God. And this shows an act of commitment and full surrender, letting go of something that is valuable. Whether that is a person, property, or an animal, God again sees the heart. And again, it makes me think about that willingness to surrender and taking up your cross every single day. And we also see that in this chapter, the Israelites to give 1/10 of their grain and their fruit as it belongs to God, and it must be set apart as holy. And it really makes me think about how God has given this land to the Israelites, and that it reminds them that this belongs to God. It shouldn't be taken for granted. So they need to give back. And in this way, we also, everything that we've been given is given by God. And we should be grateful for that. And we should worship God and show our gratitude towards God. And we should give when we can as well, to show that we are grateful for what God has given us. And this completes my reflection today. Thank you all for listening, and stay blessed.